I believe that a radical revolution of human life is inevitable. It is based on this truth, which I spoke about in a recent video. The world actually exists within consciousness, not the other way around. This is my truth and an experience which I'm going to orient you today. So we're going to talk about the worldview that we have now, that consciousness is a product of the material world, the implications of this, and what is possible if the opposite true is that the world is a product of consciousness. And first, we're going to start with a comparison. A similar revolution of thought and orientation to life has already happened, and this is the Copernican revolution. For some period of time, human beings believed in the Earth-centric model, that the Earth was at the center of the universe and all of the planets oriented around this. And it's easy to understand why. As you sit here, it doesn't feel like the Earth is flying through space. It looks like the heavens are rotating above us. So this was an experience based in people's everyday lives. But Copernicus came along, and through some process of discovery that I don't understand, he realized that it was actually the opposite, that it was felt that it's true, that it feels like the Earth is stationary and the heavens are orbiting around, but it's actually inverted. The center of the universe is the sun, and the Earth is rotating around it. Now, what came out of this is astronomy, physics, the Enlightenment, and science. The modern world, the world that we know now, is really a product, in part, or an extension of this basic reorganization of the world that we live in. Which means when we wake up to something, when we recognize something, it is able to radically transform the way that we live our lives. And this is true with consciousness. So similarly, it feels like, for most of us now, it feels like what is fundamental is the material world. This is what science explores. This is what we know. When we think about the Big Bang, we think about the material beginnings of the universe, and somehow these elements form planets, and these planets form organisms, and they form you and I. And out of this, out of the material reality, comes consciousness. Suddenly, we are conscious. And this is the way that I grew up. This is the world that I lived in. This is what felt real to me, just like people long ago, what felt real to them is that the heavens were rotating around them while they were stationary. But through my own exploration, I'm certainly not the only person to realize this, through my own exploration, what I recognize is something very different. And it's what I described in the clip at the beginning, that everything exists within my awareness. And my body, my consciousness, my felt sense of being and existing and feeling is not separate from life. Moreover, there is no reality outside of consciousness. There is no reality outside of consciousness. And this doesn't mean that there isn't a physical world. This doesn't mean that there isn't matter, or trees, or plants, or particles, or any of the other things that we know in the modern world. Just that the source of these experiences is consciousness and creation. So how does one come to know this? How have I come to know this? How did I move from a physically foundational model of reality to a consciousness foundational model of reality? Well, the first thing is that I became really curious about this. I wanted to know the truth of life, and I learned to move my attention from my thinking, my mental observation of the world, which is important, it's definitely important, to inquiring about what am I? What is this experience that we're having? When I say me, what am I actually talking about? I learned to pay more attention to my experience than my judgments about my experience. So I can still examine rocks and go through my mail and do all the things that I did before, but I learned to relax my focus into the experience of being. And progressively over time, I realized more and more that my body and my life and my feelings and my awareness are not separate from the rocks and trees. So there's several doorways to this. The first is that I would point out is there is no world outside of your awareness. This is one fundamental quality. Notice the fact that you are aware. Instead of thinking about awareness or thinking about the world, I want you to just notice that you're aware. And as you do, awareness is everywhere. If I ask you, how big is your awareness? Can you find a boundary to the experience of being aware? So as you look for it, your focus is expanding and you're doing this very thing that I described. You were thinking about consciousness as a phenomenon less, and you were experiencing it directly more. So awareness is everywhere. There is no experience without awareness. If you were not aware, there would be no life. There would be no trees. Everything that you are experiencing right now, everything that you have ever experienced exists within your awareness. It's still there. It does not deny that there are trees and telephones and people and cosmic processes and all the other fancy things that we have in the world. But the place, fundamentally, the place that all of that happens is awareness, which to me does not in any way devalue reality. It makes it even more magical, visceral. Instead of the world being out there, that I study the external world, now everything is the internal world. I'm always studying the internal world, internal to awareness. So this is one part of this realization, is that the life that you say is out there, like all the things that are way out there, they're not out there. They're in here. Yes, they're over there, but that there, the world that we describe as having all this depth and space and movement in it, all of this is internal to the experience of being aware. And again, this is not something to think about. This is something to recognize, to wake up to. But this is only part of what creates this awakening, to know that the location of life is consciousness, but so is the material. And to feel this. So when I say that my body and the physical world is not separated from my feelings, this is subject to a process of a radical transformation of the way we feel and experience ourselves, and by extension, the way that we feel and experience the world. And again, I'm going to continue to reaffirm that there are rocks, there are trees, there are solid objects. That's what the physical world is. That's one of the dimensions or flavors of consciousness. We don't need to deny this. I'm sitting in a chair. I drive my car. I'm super grateful for all the people that have made discoveries in engineering and chemistry and physics that allow me to manipulate the physical world. That still exists. But more and more, as we turn our attention to our felt sense, what we recognize is there is so much energy. There is so much emotion. There is so much sensation. Below the threshold of feeling that we all accept to be true, there is so much energy. Now, the way that you would realize this is because you would look. You would endeavor to feel your body more. Again, when I lived in a Newtonian world, or when I lived in a world where the physical world was the prime reality, I never considered that there was more that I could feel, or that this would have any value to my reality at all. So you'd have to want to do this. And you could do it for a couple reasons. The reason I did it is because I was in a lot of pain, and my life really sucked. But I also did it because I was really deeply curious. So the transformation of the body, of the felt sense that what's prime about me is that I'm physical, means that I dive into the feeling of my body. And very simply, we can take a beginning of this as if we notice our sensations, our emotions, and our thoughts right now. This is our nervous system. It's always moving. If you look right now, your sensations are moving, your emotions are moving, and your thoughts are moving. So what this means is actually that I have an experience of my body where I am not a solid physical object. The more I pay attention to the fact that my experience of my body is not solid or frozen, the experience of my body is fluid. The more I pay attention to this, the more I'm going to induce more feeling, more fluidity, more care, more aliveness, more movement. Now, the reason that we have to go and discover the movement in the first place, the reason that it isn't patently obvious, the reason that there is hidden energy is trauma. It's the story of a traumatized world, and I'll save that for later. But as we endeavor to feel more, our bodies become more and more alive, and we're able to hold a dual reality. Yes, my body is physical. Yes, my body is a solid object. If you threw a baseball at me, it wouldn't just pass right through me. But the more that I feel energy, the more energy is moving through my nervous system, I feel transparent. I feel my body as being non-solid. The boundary of my physicality softens and my body feels transparent. I begin to actually feel through the structure of my anatomy, of my physicality, and a whole new reality, new dimensions of reality and consciousness take hold. At first, there is a field of energy that pervades all of life, a unified field. This is where care comes from. This is where love comes from. This is why we are sad when people die. This is why we love our children. There is a care that holds this unified field together. We're not just random particles and constructions of elements bouncing around through the universe. There is a meaning in care and connection. And that's because there is a truth of this unified field of life that we are all a part of, a web of life. And as more and more energy comes to this through our embodiment and our relations, even this field becomes transparent. And as it becomes transparent, we see higher dimensions of consciousness where there are structures of light that are not even fluid. They are simultaneous. They are crystalline, where they hold the potential of multiple moments, multiple realities in a single, maybe encrypted or crystalline form. This is why you can be many ways at once. This is why you can feel, as you grow in your capacity, why you can feel many things, many aspects of yourself at the same time. That the flow of life is not flat. It has this dimension that many flows of life, my whole life, so much information is stored in this moment. And that's because all qualities of myself, all qualities of my ancestors are stored in the structure of light. And this light is part of the progressive breaking down of form from physicality to the structure of the fluid energy body and the unified field to a much less formed, more probabilistic, more potential-based reality. And by the time that we're here, we can see and feel well beyond the earth, well beyond the structure of our lives. We have a profound reach of presence and relationship to the structure of consciousness itself. And the more this happens, the more we start to realize that the structure of life comes from this subtlety. This is the causal nature of reality, the things that happen in my life, the person that I am, the way the world is really about the interaction of the subtlety of light landing in the world as me and expressing itself as my humanity. That the potential and the reality that is manifest comes from the subtlety of consciousness into the form of consciousness. I start to have this direction that manifestation comes from that which is most subtle in my experience. It's moving into form. And this is something that I experience directly. Now, the more that this is true for us, the more we can recognize that this is true for all things. This is true for all form. The nature of form is that it arises out of the subtlety of life. And in a similar way, you could say, this is also known within the world of science and physics, that the material world is made of particles, which are made of fields of electrons. And if we try to map where these electrons are, we can never find them as particles. They're waves, probabilistic waves. So even in science, we recognize that the nature of form is progressively of particles and waves and empty space. Awakening to consciousness, the process of healing from trauma, the process of embodiment, is really all about becoming in alignment with many levels of reality. And in this, progressively, we recognize that the substance of life, yes, it is physical, is consciousness. It's the spectrum of experience. That life, the substance of life, is experience. Again, I still play tennis, still really important to know the laws of chemistry and the physical world. But there is this tremendous depth of field which gives meaning to our lives and helps us understand what is possible. So what does this mean for our lives? What are the implications of this revolution of consciousness? Well, one is it's a very rich experience. Awakening is beautiful and meaningful and solves many of the problems around meaning and suffering, life and death, purpose. But I won't focus on those so much. The Copernican revolution improved our material conditions. It allowed us to, in understanding the laws of science, it allowed us to move through with the ways of the natural world and build things, create things, learn things. And as a result, I'm recording myself on a video. And as a result, Elon Musk is building a spaceship to Mars. Not that I want to go to Mars. But so many things in our world are possible as a result of this inversion of reality. So what is so exciting to me about a revolution of consciousness is not just that it's fulfilling for the individual, but we can move with the laws of consciousness and improve the material conditions on this world. We can use our understanding of the mechanics of reality to make the world a better place. Not just by digging minerals out of the ground or by fixing things or building things or making improvements at the material level or the mental level, that we can use our understanding of the nature of reality to bring the potential, the high frequency potential that exists in the subtlety of consciousness into this world. That we know that the source of abundance, of wealth, of better experiences, you could say more broadly, actually lies in the experience of being. It's not just that we take things and we turn them into better things. It means that we bring ourselves here in a way that makes the world better. My being, my feeling, my needs, my life, my humanity, the subtlety of my consciousness is a source of abundance and well-being. Now, in the world that I live in, that is not very directly utilized. Yes, it's true. We understand that it's important to take care of people. But when we think about generating wealth, we tend to think about the material world. If I bring goodness to the world, it's because I do something, not just because I am or because I can be myself. We're not quite there. But understanding that life is consciousness means, as we discover through the softening of our nervous system, what I realize is I am the source of light in the world. As it says in the Bible, Jesus was the light of the world, is the light of the world, or something similar. I'm paraphrasing. But this is true for every single human being. Now, if we can realize this to be true, we can invest in this. We can turn our attention to incarnation, feeling, awakening, participation is a way to bring wealth and abundance to this world. And we can actually focus on that. We can invest our time and energy and resources and intelligence to do that, to bring ourselves more here. I believe this is already happening in the world and that it will accelerate. And it's going to accelerate because it is inevitable. And it is inevitable because it's true. Because this is the nature of reality. And for me, I didn't know this. I could not comprehend this until it happened to me. So again, the primary ingredient in this happening, in this awakening for you, to realize that life is consciousness, that the place that life happens is your awareness, and the substance of this life, the form of this life, is fundamentally made out of experience. To realize this for yourself, the most important ingredient is that you want to know. This doesn't mean that you convince yourself. It means that you spend less time thinking about life and more time exploring the experience of it. Again, there's many ways to do this. I have guided meditations of many forms that take on many qualities of consciousness. In the description of this video at the bottom, I invite you to attend the free live events where I share what I consider to be the priorities, the fundamental ways in which we can shift our orientation from a material and a mental description of life to an embodiment of consciousness.